There is a missing teenager tonight in Bristol, Tennessee. We will be having a Facebook Live report in about 15 or 20 minutes. I'll be headed to the scene and joining Jess Griffith there. Hi, everybody. PJ Johnson live here at the Walmart parking lot where an extensive search has been held for a 15-year-old autistic boy. Mike, what can you tell us?
Well, I can tell you that about 12:21 that he was found. He has been brought out, and our paramedic unit is assessing and will be transporting him to the hospital. But he has been found. It appears to be okay.
This is News 5 This Weekend in high definition.
A 7-hour search for an autistic teen is now over. The teen found safe after midnight.
The ordeal ended around 12:20 in the morning. And for more on the people who found the teen, here's PJ Johnson.
Thank you, Jessica. Mike Carrier, the assistant fire chief from Bristol, Tennessee, told me tonight it was about an 80-person law enforcement effort to find this young man. But in reality, it was a group of close-knit friends that all belonged to an ATV club that found the youngster.
It's like this pretty much back in the back where we found him, but just really tall trees all the way back through there.
Bobby Richards belongs to the Mountain Trail Riders ATV Club. And once word got out about a missing child, the club decided to help.
One of them heard it on the scanner, and they know the kid had got lost. So they started calling up people in the club, and of course they got a hold of me, and we started gathering up, getting stuff together to come.
This is what it was like most of the time back in the woods. Slowly had to look through all of this.
Richards and a couple of friends decided to take 2 ATVs down the ridge, while Zach Walton and Jeremy Woods took the other 2 ATVs to check Mud Hollow, a rocky and deep canyon-like hole in the ground. And when he got back close to the boy, what was it like?
We was on a little service trail pretty much. Once we got back there too, it was mud and water, ice all over the place.
At one point, Woods thought he had hurt an animal, but just to be safe, he told his team to cut off the engines to find out what was making that sound.
The guy on the four-wheeler went to start his back, and I heard a ruffle of leaves, and I thought, well, it's just a squirrel or something, and I looked, and I said, all right, turn it back off. And he shut it off, and I hollered his name, and he hollered right back at us, and he was sitting 90 degrees. And I thought, you know, that's the Lord at work. I mean, of all the woods to cover, why would we stop right here and he be sitting, 30 yards up a bank?
Is that voice, when he answered you, going to stay with you the rest of your life?
I hope so. I mean, I'm just glad we found him. I don't think I'm a hero. I mean, we've recovered and found people before riding four-wheelers that get lost riding four-wheelers and have to go in and look, so it's kind of in my blood.
Really thick like this all the way through,
but thanks to Woods and the trail riders, a 15-year-old boy is safe and sound. Getting the facts right in Bristol, PJ Johnson, News 5, WCYB. Say what you want about Bush. He's a great driver. But there was more on the line tonight than just Kyle Busch. You've got Eric Jones and Matt Kenseth fighting for that playoff spot. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm PJ Johnson. We are just moments away from a live news conference in Knoxville, Tennessee. You know, just when you thought the Tennessee Vols search for a new football coach might be nearing an end, there has been another twist. Tennessee Athletic Director John Currie has been placed on leave with pay, and the search for a coach has been put on hold for the moment. But it gets better. Former football coach Phil Fulmer, who won the national championship back in 1998, is coming back to be the new athletic director. Now, the chancellor of the University of Tennessee, Beverly Davenport, will be coming to the podium. She's expected to explain why Currie is no longer the athletic director and why Phil Fulmer has been called in. Now, let's give you a little refresher on what we've been doing here for the last week or so. You know, John Currie went looking for a football coach. And everyone, when I say everyone, I mean the football fans of Tennessee really wanted John Gruden. When he found out that Gruden was not going to be a possibility, he moved on, and he moved on to Greg Schiano, and there was a massive social media uprising, a firestorm of sorts, and the contract with Schiano was rescinded, and that's when all this crazy stuff started happening. From that point on, it was just a moment of one coach after the other. David Cutcliffe, the former Tennessee assistant and now the head coach at Duke, quickly let everyone know he wanted to stay at Duke. And so then the Volunteers also, of course, talked to Dan Mullen, but Mullen decided to go to Florida instead. Mike Gundy was then the next guy. And then you started seeing a pattern come out as all these coaches were talking to Tennessee, but indeed all they were really doing was getting a raise for themselves. So Mike Gundy got himself a raise. And then Jeff Brom at Purdue, same thing. He's staying there. Dave Doran of NC State also got a raise. And then yesterday, Thursday, Curry flew to the West Coast to talk to Mike Leach, the coach at Washington State. And everyone kind of thought, finally, the Volunteers had found a coach. But then Curry was summoned to Knoxville, where he was told to not hire anyone and to report for a meeting early this morning. And in that meeting, he was told his services will no longer be needed. And then the Volunteers are now deciding to turn to another football legend, Phil Fulmer, the former Volunteer coach, as the athletic director. So a lot of questions in Knoxville as we wait for the press conference. You can see the podium is set, and we're just waiting for Beverly Davenport to come to that podium. You might imagine there's going to be quite a few questions for her on the national scope, because Tennessee has been kind of a bright light in sports for the last week or so as people try to figure out what in the world is going on in Knoxville. How could an athletic director have all these candidates only to come home without a football coach? It's one of the questions I'm sure she's going to address. But the interesting thing to talk about, I guess, is that Phil Fulmer is back in the spotlight. Now, you might remember that Fulmer never really stepped away from Tennessee. Even when he was dismissed, Fulmer stayed busy. He's on a lot of board of directors in Knoxville. He was always there as a consultant, and he seemed to have a pretty good relationship with Butch Jones. Now, you might remember that East Tennessee State University, when they decided to bring back football, they went through Phil Fulmer as a consultant. They hired Fulmer as a football consultant, and it was Fulmer that found the football coach for East Tennessee State University. And that's an interesting thing as well, because there was talk at the time that Phil Fulmer might actually be interested in being the football coach for East Tennessee State University. But I remember the day that we broke that story, and we were talking to Phil Fulmer at a press conference. I asked him, I said, are you interested in ever being a football coach, especially here at East Tennessee State University? And he told me then, I would never say never, but I think my coaching days are behind me. So it was clear then that Phil Fulmer still had an interest, and he still had a great love for the University of Tennessee. Now, the question is, what exactly happens next? How long will Phil Fulmer be the athletic director, and who is on down the road? And more importantly, now that Fulmer is going to head up this search, what happens with the Tennessee football program? Keep in mind, the early signing period is only just a few days away, and Tennessee is going to lose out on a whole lot of recruits if they don't have a coach in place. Now, on Twitter today, obviously the talk about Fulmer was, well, now this is going to open the door to even more candidates. That remains to be seen, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens next for the University of Tennessee, and you have to wonder exactly what's the chancellor's going to say about this. She's relatively new to the job as well. So we're going to talk about John Curry again. The thing with Curry is he still has a large contract, and the school's going to owe him between $4 and $5 million in a payout, if there is a payout. Now, you would have to wonder, since he was dismissed this morning and actually been placed on leave instead of saying he was just fired, where all this is going to end. Will Tennessee look to get some of that money back from Curry? Try to say maybe that Curry's the one who caused this? Well, we've got some answers coming, because now the press conference is getting ready to start. We're going to take you live to the University of Tennessee for the Chancellor, Beverly Davenport.
Hey, PJ.
Hey, Julie, it's been a very busy day in Orlando. It started early this morning for the ETSU Boxes. They had breakfast, and then they had a noon press conference. Now, here's what we've learned about Steve Forbes this week. He's done 60 interviews in 8 days. This guy has turned into a media darling. Let's take you behind the scenes here in Orlando as Steve Forbes walks into his press conference today. Forbes looking around, talking to the press. His team also was at that press conference, and then they practiced for about 40 minutes. But here's the best part. To explain his team, Steve Forbes gave us a shout-out to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to talk about his team's success.
We have some guys from the land of misfit toys. If you ever watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you know what I'm talking about. They all need a home.
You have to love a coach that uses Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer to inspire his team. Now, we'll talk to some fans later at 6 o'clock that made the trip down here from Johnson City. But I want to talk about your bracket. Have you filled out your bracket? I filled out my bracket, and I already hate my bracket. What are the odds of filling out a perfect bracket? To get the answer to that question, let's go over to Jess Griffith with more.